Hello everyone! I am so excited for our project for this week. We are going to be taking a look at American Windows, a stained glass painting by the artist Marc Chagall, and we are going to be creating our own stained glass windows. But before we do, let's take a look at the masterpiece itself. Marc Chagall painted this after two world wars that had destroyed people and places he loved. Expressionist style, he expressed his inner feelings and moods rather than real scenes. Fantasy painter, objects, and people are often dreamlike, upside down, or confused, and this is the style that Marc Chagall used in this stained glass. Chagall was an expressionist painter who combined symbolic images in fantasy settings. He used bright colors and abstract forms to tell a story. In his later years, he designed several stained glass windows for churches and other buildings. So there are actually 3 stained glass panels, and we're going to actually zoom in and take a look primarily at this first panel. The first 2 panels of American Windows represents music and art, figures of artists, musicians. The first 2 panels of American Windows represents music and art, figures of artists and musicians seem to float, dreamlike, as well as past instruments, animals, such as this donkey here, birds, trees, and buildings. The curving lines of the tree branches and the lines extending from the palette and brushes move our eyes to other figures around the composition. The black leading lines, right here, all along here, define the images and emphasize their expressive curves. The overall blue background and the repeated black leading lines unify the composition. Repetition of colors and shapes adds unity. Angular leading lines surrounds the Star of David, the horn player, the cityscape, and the green easel right here. The sinuous or curving lines of the tree branches and the lines extending from objects are repeated in the black leading. The intense blue background is a bright, luminous color. It contrasts with the other colors and the areas of bright white. The values of blue range from dark to light. Dark blue forms a swirl across the top of the windows and covers large areas near the bottom of each panel. The lightest value of blue, almost white, pours like a beam of sunlight in the upper left. Grisaille, tones of black and gray ink, outline figures, buildings, trees, and other details. Chagall did not follow the normal rules of perspective. He placed large figures near the top of the window instead of in the lower foreground. Figures also vary in scale, unrelated to their placement in the composition. Small buildings in the foreground overlap buildings of larger scale. The smallest violin is in the foreground, right here. The larger ones in the background. Today we will be learning how to make your own stained glass frame. To complete this project, you're going to need scissors, tape, a pencil, a Sharpie or black marker, the template for frame document that I have included in this email, a piece of wax paper, parchment paper, tracing paper, or a transparency cut 8.5 by 5.5, a 9 by 12 inch piece of construction paper, a blank piece of paper for sketching out your ideas, and an assortment of markers. Now alternatively, instead of using a transparent piece of paper, you can also just draw out your picture on a regular piece of office paper. And you do not necessarily have to have construction paper. This is for the frame for your stained glass, but you do not need to have a frame, so that is optional as well. To start, brainstorm about a dream or fantasy type story you could draw. This could be real or it could be made up. Then you're going to draw it out on a piece of paper. Now it might be helpful to first cut the paper 8.5 by 5.5, because remember that's going to be the size of your transparent paper. But I just drew mine out and I marked the dimensions before I began, and then I drew it out afterwards. Remember to make the images of the main characters or objects large to give importance to them. Another tip is you can turn the paper when adding smaller objects to make them upside down or sideways to create a more dreamlike composition. Once you have your basic outline, you're going to take your wax paper or your parchment paper or whatever you have, and you're going to place it over the top, and then you're going to just outline all of the lines in either black Sharpie or a black marker. And then once you do that, you can color in the objects and the space, the geometric shapes behind them. Once you've finished coloring everything in, you're going to create your own frame by taking your 9 by 12 construction paper and folding it in half. And then folding it in half again, but now the other way. And then along the double folded line, that's where you're going to place your template. So you're going to cut out the template, and like I said, along that double folded line, you're going to place that down and try to center it, and then you're going to draw a line around the template. But notice you're only drawing a line on the 3 sides, because you're going to be cutting along here, but you're not going to be cutting on this double fold. And then that's going to show you where you're going to cut. Then you're going to unfold, and this is going to be your frame. Now your frame is kind of like a pocket. So you're going to insert the stained glass into this. Now when I did this, I found that the frame was too thick, so it was covering a lot of my picture. So what I did instead was I refolded it again, and then I trimmed off even more of the frame to make it even thinner. So when you're done cutting out the frame, then you're going to place it inside, place the picture inside, and then tape around the edges. Once you're done, you can put it up to window and tape it to the window to let the light shine through.